Canberra Chess Club Club Championship 2022, Round 1. The Dark Knights and the Wag of their Tail. I called this game the Dark Knights because I played with the dark pieces and 10 of my first 15 moves were with the knights. This is uncommon because the opening is meant to be, in principle, the time where you bring all your pieces out, not just repeatedly moving your knights all around the shop. But in this case, the movements were all justified. This game was the tale of my dark knights reigning supreme and beating my opponent via constant threats of forks, one of which my opponent saw only too late. So close did my opponent come in the ensuing play to succumbing to yet another of the fatal forks in the position, and if he had, that would have really earned the title of Dark Knights. Instead, he found a way to fight on, gallantly, I guess, despite his fatal injuries. Therefore, the game dragged on a bit and earned the subtitle, The Wag of Their Tail. I did not play a perfect game, but it was close. I only made one big mistake, and it was on move 6. Other than that one move, however, I can be proud of how I played. I played it accurately, if not perfectly, and put the game away in just 27 moves. So without further ado, let's see the way I pressed him with the power of my Dark Knights and finished him with the wag of their tail. The game started with the main line of the Roy Lopez. It's interesting to me that even now, at the peak of my chess career thus far, I have never looked further into the Roy Lopez, perhaps the equal most famous opening of all time, than the first 5 moves. It shows how much further there is for me to improve my results. It's also why, after he played d4 as his 5th move, I found myself having to try and work it out, this famous and most analysed of openings, completely on the fly. Perhaps it's not surprising then that what I came up with was wrong. I knew that if I took d4, he'd play e5 and chase my knight. My idea was, however, to throw in the intermediate move bishop b4 check, and then, if c3, d takes c3, and if e takes f6, then c takes b2 check, and I'm crushing him. Therefore I expected, after bishop b4 check, either c3, d takes c3, knight takes c3, bishop takes c3 check, b takes c3, or maybe after bishop b4 check, bishop d2, which is what was played, or any of the knights to d2. In any case, I thought I'd be fine. I see now what I missed. I missed bishop b4 check, c3, d takes c3, b takes c3, and now my bishop is attacked, as is my knight, and I will lose one of the minor pieces and have a less active position. But he missed his chance. After the move, he played bishop d2. I played extremely accurately from here. It was quite self-explanatory until move 10, where I considered knight b6, which I thought was quite solid but left my kingside quite sparse of defensive capabilities. Knight d to e7, which I considered also very solid, but a little cramped and not my style. And knight to f4, which I played. I like how it attacked g2 and left open the possibility of responding to knight takes d4 with knight takes e5, thereby allowing me to hold on to my extra pawn, but also have abundant defensive capabilities around my kingside. Only after I played knight f4 did I realise that I had a better response to knight takes d4 than knight takes e5. My opponent, however, did not realise. After he castled and I castled, he fell into the trap. I had quite unintentionally laid. He played knight takes d4, and to his shock and visible surprise, I took his knight. And then he saw it. My dark knight was absolutely untouchable, for if he took it with his queen, he would fall prey to a royal fork. And if he didn't take my knight, which he didn't, he would have to also deal with the threat to his bishop, which he did. After some thought about queen d5 threatening mate and the subsequent complications, I decided to consolidate my overwhelming advantage into a far less complicated, but just as crushing position, and played the powerful and simple retreating move, bringing one of the two dark knights back to its stable on c6. My opponent had been hit hard. I was now up a full piece, and no sooner than he regained a semblance of awareness and played his next move, g3, did I hit him again with another big hit. Knight h3 check, followed by the capture of the pawn on e5. The Dark Knight, again the hero of the story. I left it en prise, but only because I was also threatening his bishop, and a gain of time with d6 or d5, check if he were game enough to touch my knight. He wasn't. He instead retreated his bishop to e2 and gave me the signal to open up the center and my light-squared bishop with one stone. After f4 and knight c4, he moved his hand toward the b2 pawn, intending pawn b3. He nearly touched the piece. It would have been so nice to have won the game just completely with my knights. It would have truly made the title of Dark Knight hold real water. But at the last second before he touched the pawn, he held himself at bay. He thought another while, and finally played bishop takes c4, after which the position became more simplified, although without my trusted steed. At queen f3, I knew my knight could land itself in some hot water, so I wanted to prepare a counter-attack of equal or greater strength, and hence played queen f6. I also liked this move because it took any sting he may have had with ideas around playing rook d1 out, because now that would come without tempo. After knight c3, I had my last think of the game, and I thought I might have played it wrong, a bit inaccurate. I thought of several queen moves, but was not happy with any of them. Finally, after a good 10-minute think, I saw the move. Not best by the standard of a computer, but nonetheless still far too strong to overcome. Bishop d7. The trap I set was obvious, and since he had avoided the worst of my previously threatened royal forks, I didn't think he'd fall for it. But I suppose he'd had enough on some level. He had been hemorrhaging for quite some time. He played queen takes b7, and I replied swiftly and without mercy. After I took his queen, I realized I could have taken an extra pawn with tempo before giving up my knight, and that is what the computer likes most. But in hindsight, I like the way I play. Sure, I gave up an extra pawn, but I already had an overwhelming material advantage, and this way he would have to bring his king out further into the center, without gaining any tempo for the development of his rooks. I call that compensation for the pawn. After f5, f takes g4, I just needed one more accurate move. I found it. Rook a to e8, bringing the last piece into the attack, and squelching any chance at a counter for him. He let me trade the rooks and check him powerfully towards my pawns, at which point he resigned because of the forced mate in 3. And it all started with a blunder missed by both of us, and then a series of knight moves, each containing hidden threats and power, building up into the win of a clean piece and the dashing of his hopes. Round 1, over and out. Join me next week to see how we go with round 2 of this 9-round club championship. If you've enjoyed the video today, please ensure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss future videos. I'll upload once a week at this point in time, and by the time the tournament ends, I'll see how we're going in terms of numbers of subscribers or positive comments, and if there are some decent numbers, I'll continue going. So your support would be vital to this channel continuing on. If you have anyone else you think might be interested in the channel, please share it with them as well. And if by chance you'd like to get in touch, my email address is mikeschessvideos@gmail.com. One final thing is, if you liked the intro music to this episode, it was a song by Chorsha called The Tomorrow War, and I got this song from the website artlist.io, which is loyalty-free music put up by very talented artists. The other song in this episode was called To Be Both, and it was by an artist called Amparo, who's also listed on the same website, artlist.io. And until next time, if we're lucky enough to have a next time, take care of yourself and others, and I'll see you then.